You feel it before you see it, a heaviness that creeps into your mornings, not loud enough to stop you, but persistent enough to follow you through the day. It's there in the way your energy dips before lunch, in the vague fuzziness behind your eyes when the sun begins to set. You check your sugar numbers, they're still high. Again, even though you've done what they told you, even though breakfast was plain, even though your snacks are clean, even though you've been good, there's a quiet kind of frustration that lives here. Not the kind that yells, but the kind that makes you question your own effort. You start to wonder if this is just the way things go now, if maybe your body is too far gone to respond, if this strange tide in your blood is something you just have to live with. But something deeper in you knows the body doesn't give up, it adapts. And if it's still holding on to sugar, still clinging to the glucose in your blood it doesn't trust, you'll feed it again. Then it's not about restriction, it's about recognition. It's trying to signal something you've missed, a gap, a missing piece. Not all sugar is poison. Not all sweetness betrays you. In fact, there are certain sweet things, common, natural, even pleasurable, that act like keys instead of locks. They slip into the places where your cells are stuck and they begin to open them, quietly, predictably, daily. These aren't exotic fixes, they're fruits. But not just any fruits. 5 specific kinds that your body at this stage in life can use like medicine. And when you begin to feed it that way, not to punish but to repair, something shifts, slowly at first, then unmistakably. And it begins with sweetness. You tried everything they said would work, the oatmeal with no sugar, the dry toast, the low-fat yogurts, the endless salads, the glass of water before every meal. You said no to cake, said no to juice, said no so many times the sweetness felt like a memory you weren't allowed to touch anymore. And still, your blood sugar rose. Not in leaps maybe, but in steady defiance. And that's what hurt the most. Not the climb, but the fact that it kept happening even when you were doing it right. It's hard to describe that kind of betrayal. The kind that doesn't scream, but whispers in the numbers. In the 10 points higher than yesterday. In the 15 points that refuse to budge. And over time, you begin to wonder if this is just aging. If your body is silently closing doors. You start to shrink your world to what feels safe. But safe starts to feel like empty, bland, joyless. What if the plan you were following so well, so faithfully, wasn't built for the body you have now? What if it was designed for a younger metabolism, a faster engine, a different stage of life entirely? Because as we age, insulin doesn't knock as loudly. Muscles don't soak up sugar like they used to. Even a well-behaved meal can push your blood sugar into stubborn territory if it's missing the right partners. And too often, the partners missing are the ones we were told to avoid. Fruits, sweet ones, rich in the very things that now more than ever your body is calling for. Not all of them, just 5. 5 that hold a kind of gentle intelligence, soluble fiber, phytonutrients, compounds that calm the storm instead of feeding it. And when they return to your plate, something lost begins to return to you. Not indulgence, not rebellion, but relief. Relief doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it's just the absence of dread before your next check, the steadiness after a meal you didn't have to second guess. But for that to happen, you have to meet your body where it is, not where it used to be. And the truth, though it stings at first, is this: your body has changed. Not broken, not failing, changed. After 60, glucose doesn't move the same way through the bloodstream. The cells that once opened wide at the whisper of insulin now require a firmer knock. Muscles that used to act like sponges, soaking up sugar for energy, are now more hesitant. The pancreas still works, but it tires more easily. And so the sugar stays longer, not because you're doing something wrong, but because your body is asking for a different rhythm, a softer support, a nourishment that knows how to listen. This is where most diets miss the mark. They cut, restrict, punish. They treat sweetness like a sin and fruit like a guilty pleasure. But certain fruits, certain sweet things, have the wisdom your cells are craving. Not empty glucose, but slow digesting sugars wrapped in fiber and healing compounds. These aren't just snacks, they're tools, tonics, natural allies. And what's remarkable is that your body still recognizes them, even after years of imbalance, even after medications and misfires and misguided advice. The right fruit, in the right form, doesn't raise your blood sugar, It stabilizes it, supports it, rebuilds the bridges between insulin and cell. This isn't about going backward, it's about tuning, replacing frustration with focus, shifting from what used to work to what now works better. And as you begin to feed your body with that kind of understanding, something happens. The numbers don't just change, you do. Because what you've been told about fruit has likely come with a warning label, hidden sugar, natural sugar, still sugar, so you began to pull away, you skipped the banana, you passed on the peach, you stared at the apple and wondered if it was worth the risk. And somewhere along the line, fruit became something to fear. But that fear, though well-meaning, is misplaced. The sugar in fruit is not the same as the sugar in soda, not even close. One comes naked, rushing into your bloodstream with nothing to slow it down. The other arrives dressed in fiber, wrapped in water, cushioned by vitamins, anchored by minerals. It's not just sweetness, it's structure, a system designed by nature to move gently through you, not crash into you, to feed your cells slowly, evenly, rhythmically. And there's something else fruit carries that most don't mention: resistance. Not the kind that fights you, but the kind that fights for you. Antioxidants that reduce the silent inflammation, making your cells ignore insulin. Phytochemicals that soften blood vessels. Micronutrients that whisper to the pancreas, encouraging it to keep going. These aren't indulgences, they're interventions. But the trick is knowing which ones. Because not all fruit is created equal. Some surge too quickly, some carry more sugar than your body can handle in this stage of life. But others, just 5, have a perfect profile. Sweet, yes, but also slow, stable, supportive. They don't ask your body to fight, they help it rest, repair, rebalance. You don't need to fear sweetness, you just need to choose it with new eyes, because what once was fuel now needs a guide. And these fruits, common, humble, whole, can become that guide. They don't fix everything overnight, but they do begin to tip the scale. 'Tis not the sweetness alone that makes the difference. It's what comes with it, what slows it down, holds it steady, guides it where it needs to go. That's where soluble fiber steps in. Not loud, not flashy, but quietly essential. It's the difference between a sugar spike and a sugar stream, between a rush and a rhythm. Soluble fiber dissolves in water and becomes a soft, gel-like substance inside your gut. But more than that, it acts like a wise gatekeeper. It slows the rate at which sugar is absorbed, blunting the peaks, stretching the valleys. Instead of a wave crashing through your bloodstream, it becomes a calm tide. It tells your body, take your time, no rush. Let's move gently. And your body listens. Insulin no longer scrambles to keep up. Cells feel less overwhelmed. The roller coaster of high then low begins to flatten into something more manageable, more forgiving. Meals don't feel like battles anymore. They feel like nourishment. What's more, soluble fiber feeds the good bacteria in your gut, the very ones that help regulate blood sugar from the inside out. It's not just working on the surface, it's repairing the roots. That's why these 5 fruits matter, not just because they're sweet, but because they're structured, because they carry with them the very tools your body needs to handle sweetness, tools that make sugar less threatening, that make insulin's job easier, that make you feel, once again, like food is something you can trust. And now we begin, not with pills, not with punishment, but with a handful of berries. Blue, red, dark and dense with color and purpose. You'll know it when you taste it. This first fruit is more than a snack. It's that signal. The first one comes small, rich and deeply colored. You feel it before the flavor even hits. A handful of blueberries in your palm, or the soft crumble of raspberries between your fingers. They don't shout for your attention. They offer it. A slow release of sweetness, a texture that lingers just long enough to feel like something more than fuel. Inside that handful is a kind of chemistry your body recognizes instantly. Anthocyanins, those deep blue and red pigments, are more than color. They are messengers. They speak to your cells, coaxing them back into insulin sensitivity. They reduce inflammation in blood vessels. They lower oxidative stress. All without drama, all without demand, just quiet repair. Blueberries in particular have been shown to improve how your body uses insulin, not because they are low sugar, but because they are smart sugar. Sugar accompanied by fiber, by antioxidants, by a slower metabolic rhythm. Raspberries bring even more fiber per bite, supporting digestion while moderating glucose impact. Together, they are a powerful pair, tart and sweet, gentle and precise. But beyond the science, berries do something deeper. They restore a sense of joy around food. They remind you that something can be sweet and still safe, that not every treat leads to regret. And in doing so, they soften the emotional weight that comes with every reading, every food choice, every quiet fear you carry when the numbers rise. Eat them fresh, a small bowl in the morning, or sprinkle them frozen into warm oats, letting their juices stain the spoon. However they arrive, they carry the same message. Your body is still listening, and it still knows how to respond. You're not chasing balance anymore. You're beginning to feel it. It's easy to forget the power of what's always been there. An apple doesn't boast. It doesn't dazzle with color or mystery. It just waits on your counter, in your crisper drawer, often passed over for something newer, flashier, or falsely labeled safer. But the apple is steady, and for your blood sugar, that steadiness matters more than ever. Bite into one, and you'll feel it immediately. The resistance of the skin, the soft crunch beneath, the slow release of juice. That chewing isn't just texture, it's activation. It signals your brain that food is coming, and with it, the slow cascade of hormones that calm appetite, stabilize sugar, and promote fullness. You're not just feeding yourself, you're regulating yourself. The skin, often peeled away, holds most of the fruit's antioxidants, polyphenols that protect blood vessels, natural compounds that support the pancreas and reduce the inflammation that drives insulin resistance. Inside, the flesh delivers pectin, a form of soluble fiber that binds with cholesterol, slows glucose absorption, and feeds the beneficial bacteria in your gut. Every part of the apple has a role. Nothing is wasted. And unlike so many packaged foods labeled low glycemic, the apple offers a full body experience. Crunch, chew, flavor, fiber, fullness. A moment of connection between what you need and what you enjoy. One medium apple isn't a blood sugar threat. It's a balancing act in motion, especially when eaten mid-morning or alongside a handful of almonds or after a brisk walk. It doesn't spike you, it sustains you. There's comfort in routine, in reaching for something familiar and finding that it still works, that it still gives. And slowly, as these fruits return to your plate, so does your confidence. Because balance doesn't require complexity. Sometimes it just starts with an apple. And if the apple is familiar comfort, the pear is quiet reassurance. Often overshadowed, sometimes softened to the point of being forgotten, the pear waits with a sweetness that doesn't demand attention, but rewards those who notice it. Where the apple is crisp, the pear yields. Where one wakes the senses, the other soothes them. But beneath its gentle flesh is a structure built for healing. Pears carry soluble fiber in abundance, especially in their tender skins. Just one can provide over a fifth of what your body needs to slow digestion, regulate blood sugar, and feed your gut with the nourishment it needs to respond, not react. Their natural sugars release slowly, buffered by that fiber, allowing glucose to trickle in rather than rush. This keeps your insulin calm, your cells less defensive, your body more open to balance. And it isn't just what they do, it's how they feel. There's something about a pear's softness that mirrors what your body craves at this stage: ease, gentleness, relief. When you chew slowly, when you let the juice linger at the edges of your mouth, it becomes more than a snack. It's a signal to slow down, to receive, to stop treating food like a fight. The flavonoids in pears work deep within the bloodstream, reducing oxidative stress, supporting liver function, and reducing the inflammation that quietly raises insulin resistance over time. These aren't effects you feel immediately. They unfold over weeks, then months, like the subtle return of energy between meals, like the absence of a nap you didn't need, the number on the monitor no longer surprising you. This is the rhythm you're building now, not just cutting what harms, but restoring what helps. And in the quiet curve of a pear, your body begins to remember how that feels. Not every support comes from something familiar. Sometimes it's the small, unusual things. tucked at the edge of your grocery list, easy to pass by, that holds surprising strength. The kiwi doesn't look like much at first. Fuzzy, oddly shaped, tucked between larger, louder fruits. But cut one open and it reveals its secret. Bright green, seeded symmetry, a kind of vitality that seems to glow from within. It's not just pretty, it's powerful. Inside that vibrant flesh is a blend of vitamin C, potassium, and actinidin, an enzyme that helps break down proteins, making digestion smoother, especially as metabolism slows with age. But what matters even more is what kiwis do after meals. Studies show they reduce the blood sugar rise that typically follows carbohydrate-heavy dishes. In other words, they help your body recover, soften the spike, ease the strain. Just 1 or 2 kiwis eaten after lunch or dinner can change how your body absorbs what you've just eaten. They don't erase the carbs, but they guide them, slow them, help them arrive in your bloodstream on a timeline your insulin can manage. That's the gift of pairing fruit with wisdom. It's not about denial, it's about direction. And there's something refreshing about their brightness. Tart but not sour, sweet but never cloying. That balance on your tongue becomes a mirror of what you're working toward internally, a system not in crisis but in conversation, a loop that responds instead of panics, a body that feels less like a battleground, more like a home again. Kiwis aren't loud in their healing, but they're consistent, predictable, trustworthy, and as they become part of your routine, so does the feeling that things are slowly turning, not because you've cut more out, but because you've let the right things in. And then there are cherries, dark, soft, sweet in a way that feels almost forbidden, yet they hold something no other fruit on this list quite does, a stillness, a settling effect. Not just on the tongue, but in the nervous system in the late hours when sugar tends to linger and cortisol keeps the body alert when it should be resting. Cherries are more than just dessert. They are a kind of quiet medicine, packed with anthocyanins, like berries, yes, but with an added gift, melatonin. The hormone your body uses to signal sleep, to lower evening stress, to begin the nightly reset that blood sugar desperately depends on. And when you bring cherries into your evening routine, you're not just satisfying a craving, you're supporting that reset. What many don't realize is how deeply blood sugar and sleep are connected. Poor sleep leads to higher insulin resistance. Higher resistance means morning sugars that feel impossible to tame. It becomes a loop that cherries gently begin to break. Their anti-inflammatory properties soothe the tissues that insulin travels through. Their natural sweetness satisfies without spiking, and their compounds signal your system. It's okay to let go, it's okay to soften. A small bowl after dinner, a few frozen ones blended into a bedtime smoothie. However you choose, they become a way to end the day with sweetness that doesn't cost you in the morning. A softness that serves instead of sabotages. They offer the opposite of the usual late-night indulgence. Instead of guilt, they bring balance. With these 5 fruits, berries, apples, pears, kiwis, cherries, you're not collecting miracles. You're collecting patterns, actions, repeated signals that tell your body the danger is over. The fight is not required. There is a new kind of sweetness now, and it's working with you. And if all of this feels new, not because the fruits are unfamiliar, but because the invitation is, you're not alone. For years, the advice was simple. Less sugar, fewer carbs, more control. And you followed it. You said no to sweetness. You traded pleasure for precision. You skipped meals, counted servings, feared food. You shrank your plate down to something that felt like discipline, but eventually it felt like defeat because the numbers didn't move, or they moved and then snapped back, and no one told you why. But it wasn't failure, it was friction, a mismatch between the body's changing chemistry and the advice frozen in time. You were treating a dynamic system with static rules, and over time the body pushed back, not in protest, but in protection, holding on to sugar because it was starved of what it truly needed: fiber, micronutrients, gentle signals of safety, not just fewer calories, but better ones. Because blood sugar isn't just about sugar, it's about stress, digestion, inflammation, sleep, gut bacteria, timing. What once was a simple math problem has become something more personal, more subtle. And cutting carbs across the board, though tempting, often leaves your body in a state of quiet tension, never quite nourished. That's why the fruits matter, not because they're allowed, but because they're aligned. They don't just avoid harm, they offer help. They fill in the missing spaces. They give your body the materials it's been waiting for. Not to lose weight, not to restrict, but to function, to return to something closer to calm. So no, you weren't wrong, you were just missing pieces, and now you're starting to place them back, one bite at a time, one fruit at a time, not to fix what's broken, but to remind your body how to trust again. But even with the right fruits returning to your plate, there are others, innocent on the surface, familiar in the bowl, that quietly keep your blood sugar from finding peace. These are the saboteurs, not because they're bad, not because they're unnatural, but because at this stage in your life, their impact is too fast, too sharp, too much. Grapes, watermelon, pineapple, sweet, refreshing, easy to eat in handfuls, but they rush. Their sugars, though natural, arrive like a sudden knock on the door. Your insulin isn't ready to answer. There's little fiber to slow them, little density to fill you. You eat one piece, then another. Before long, the bloodstream is flooded, and the very balance you've been working toward is swept away in minutes. And then there are the dried fruits, raisins, dates, figs. What was once a piece of fruit is now sugar distilled. No water, little fiber, just sweetness concentrated into small, sticky bites. A single dried fig carries more sugar than an entire fresh pear. A handful of raisins hits your glucose like a soft drink with a health halo. And because they're tiny, we eat them mindlessly, often without knowing we've slipped. This isn't about fear, it's about awareness. A quiet shift in choices. Swap grapes for berries. Trade dried fruit for sliced apple or fresh pear. If you crave pineapple, pair it with protein, nuts, yogurt, even a slice of cheese. Slow it down. Make it part of a whole moment, not a quick fix. Your body can handle sweetness, but it needs your help. The goal is never perfection. It's consistency. It's choosing fruits that stay with you, not race through you. Ones that give you hours of energy, not minutes of regret. Because healing doesn't happen in what you remove. It happens in what you replace with purpose. Even the right fruit taken at the wrong time can feel like a setback. Because the body isn't static. It moves through rhythms, waves of sensitivity, windows of readiness. And understanding when to eat these fruits is just as vital as knowing which ones. It's the difference between working with your biology or accidentally pushing against it. Mid-morning is a window of grace. The early blood sugar dip after breakfast, the rising energy of the day. It's a time when your body is primed to handle natural sugar with ease. A small bowl of berries then doesn't just taste good. It reinforces balance. It supports your next meal. It prevents the crash that sends you searching the pantry at noon. Then there's after movement. A walk, a few minutes of housework, even light stretching. Activity makes your muscles more open to sugar, like doors that swing wide, ready to store what you eat as energy instead of leaving it floating in your bloodstream. That's the perfect moment for a pear, or a crisp apple shared with someone you love. And in the evening, when cravings rise and discipline tires, this is where cherries or a kiwi can become something more than a snack. They signal rest, they lower cortisol, they help sleep begin on time, and blood sugar settle into its night rhythm. It's not just dessert, it's a hand extended to tomorrow. There's wisdom in pairing too. Fruit with a little fat, a little protein, a spoon of almond butter, a handful of seeds, slows absorption and amplifies the benefits. You're not just eating, you're harmonizing, creating meals that echo your body's real needs. This isn't about rigid rules, it's about rhythm, gentle timing, a pattern your body will begin to recognize, and slowly you'll start to feel not just full, but aligned. At first, it's easy to miss. The shift isn't dramatic. There's no sudden jolt of energy. No overnight transformation, just a little more steadiness, a little less urgency between meals. You finish breakfast and realize hours later that you haven't been thinking about food. You haven't been chasing the next bite. Your hands are steadier, your mind a bit clearer. You didn't nap and you didn't need to. Then it shows up in the evenings. You fall asleep a little faster. You stay asleep longer. And when you wake, there's not that usual fog, that sense that your body's been fighting through the night. The numbers on your meter, still not perfect but quieter, more forgiving, less like spikes, more like gentle curves. Cravings begin to shift. Not because your willpower grew stronger, but because your blood sugar stopped swinging. The sharp dips, the frantic signals for something sweet, those begin to fade. And in their place, you notice the soft pull towards something whole, something cool, crisp, fibrous. The kind of food that nourishes not just your stomach, but your nervous system. The kind that leaves you feeling satisfied, not just full. And with that comes something harder to describe. A lightness, not dramatic, but noticeable. You begin to trust your body again. You stop bracing for the crash. You stop fearing your hunger. You start to listen, not to the old habits, but to the new rhythm growing inside you. This is what it feels like when the body begins to respond, not with fireworks, but with calm, with clarity, with the slow reintroduction of ease into your daily life. The fruit didn't fix everything, but it gave your body something to build on, a place to begin. And now it's beginning. It doesn't announce itself. There's no grand signal, no sudden applause, just a quiet turnaround, so gradual it feels like waking from a long, soft sleep. One day, you notice your body isn't fighting you anymore. The resistance, the heaviness, the unpredictability, the fear is fading, not gone entirely, but no longer in control. That's how healing begins, not with a diet, not with another rule, but with listening, with feeding your body what it was asking for all along. Not more effort, but more understanding. Not deeper restriction, but deeper nourishment. And the answer all this time wasn't hidden in expensive plans or extreme methods. It was in 5 simple fruits. 5 sweet, unassuming allies that met your body where it is, not where it used to be. Berries that lowered the drawbridge between insulin and your cells. Apples that filled the space between meals with steady calm. Pears that repaired quietly from within, kiwis that softened the spike and brought balance after meals, and cherries that gently closed the day with rest instead of rebound. One by one, they stepped in where chaos had lived and brought order, rhythm, trust. And through them, something shifted. The numbers began to bend, the cravings softened, the sleep deepened, the fear loosened its grip, and in its place came a new kind of knowing, not just about food, but about yourself, that you were never failing, that your body wasn't broken, that it was communicating the only way it knew how. And now, finally, you're listening. You didn't need to starve. You didn't need to punish. You just needed to support, to give your body something it could work with, because healing after 60 doesn't come from more control. It comes from collaboration. From giving your body the signals it understands again and again until it begins to believe in safety. And that belief, that trust, is what lowers your blood sugar, what restores your energy, what gives you the kind of sweetness that stays, not a spike, not a crash, but a calm. You haven't just changed your plate, you've changed the conversation with your food, with your body, with your future. And now the healing isn't just possible, it's already underway.